Thank you very much. I think that we can open the discussion and for this very important paper. So, if someone wants to have some intervention, comment, or suggestion, please.
No, thank you. Now, we've heard a lot about very important issues, and I'd like to refer in particular to what Professor Riccaboni said about social innovation, going beyond the silos and so on. And this was more or less reflected by all the others as well. Now, we in Germany are right now actually exposed to the challenge to really do that. I mean, there will be a phase-out plan for coal, and we have our Polish friends here. So if you look at the concrete region in Germany, in Poland, in France, in Italy, wherever, and of course in Africa, the question is, how do you do it in the end? So of course we want to collaborate, we want to use smart technologies, but you see, the problem is how to really do that in a limited period of time, huh? Instead of just saying we need to do that. And that means you need a certain degree of concreteness, and I just give you an example for that. So the idea is to take a concrete region, not all regions at the same time, that's impossible. You have to create a role model, actually. The region does need to be large enough that you can integrate things, but it shouldn't be too large because otherwise you cannot handle it. And it is really, most or many of us here are physicists. That means we know what a phase transition is. A phase transition is not, so you have two different phases, water and ice, for example. A phase transition does not happen in a way that every cell in the system is gradually changing into the new phase. But it is simultaneously both parts, both phases coexist, but it's important that the new phase is growing faster than the old phase is rebounding, so to speak. So it's important that you create the pure new phase in certain places and that it will dominate the other one in the end. So we have to create, within Europe, for example, within Africa, the new phases at the right scale. But for that as well, you have to create the new value propositions, and I give you, again, an example. For example, the whole world is now facing the problem of plastics. Plastics is everywhere in the oceans, on land, and so on. It would be an extremely important value proposition if we are able to come up with biodegradable wrappings, for example, as Katia Bastioli is doing here in Italy, for example. So why shouldn't an entire region become the hub for creating this new type of wrappings, for example, based entirely on the bioeconomy? And so I just recall that within Horizon Europe, we propose to do these super transition labs, where you take an entire region, say in Upper Silesia, around Katowice, for example, or around Magdeburg in Germany, or around Lyon in France, and you say, invest 1 billion, say, for 5 years or 10 years, in order to turn the entire region into a sustainable one. And you know that in Europe we have the flagship project, so 1 billion is invested, for example, into quantum computing. That's very nice. But shouldn't we have also flagship regions where you can do this? Because otherwise we will keep on telling politicians this is nice to do, but they will not provide leadership. I don't see anywhere in Europe any political leadership in this. So it has to be driven by science.
We have, maybe we have for the, please. Yes, okay.
Okay. I think what Professor Schoenhuber said is really very, very important, because maybe also the way we use the European funds for supporting infrastructure. I mean the funding for development. Okay, not only the science. Okay, but the funding for development is not targeted in this way, and it's a very, very, very much distributed, diffused, and that could be an interesting new way. Thinking to the next budget to target region-wise transitions, integrative projects, not just creating one road or one electrical car or system of electrical car and food, but just including everything in that particular experiment, including food, including lifestyles, including having a real in mind, having a real complete change in the region, of course, boundaries, and using this funding for this type of transitions, that instead of distributing funds in a sectorial or across huge areas, that could be, I think, an interesting paradigm, and I really support this idea, really. Of course, you need the politics and governments, regional governments, to really buy on that. And that's, again, humans that are getting play the role, that have to convince citizens, have to convince the politics that they want to be part of the experiment. And that's really maybe challenging sometimes, but if you find good also politicians that buy in this, maybe this can be done. Yeah, but this is why you have to select a region, maybe not a special region, let's say.
But what would be a competition, actually? Yeah? If certain regional governments are willing to do it, it would be natural selection, if you like.
John, can I suggest something maybe? As you know, the Argentine hold the G20 in this last days. So maybe we can prepare a message to send to the G20 in behalf of the Academy of the Pope and the very important institution that you represent, President, and maybe of the Academy of Poland, to say the urgency to take some measures to avoid the crisis of global warming. Maybe.
No, thank you very much. And we have tried various times, of course, to approach the Argentine government, I mean, you in particular, and maybe you will have a chance to talk to the president now. But I think it's two things, really. It's the overall urgency of the system and the problem, and we have Professor Lee here and others who will tell us again. But the second is that you need to create, if you like, role models, regional role models, where you can show that we can do it in a different way, absolutely. Yeah? That is very necessary, and this could be underpinned. And talking about Argentina, I think last year or 2 years ago, we had very important interventions here at the Pontifical Academy from Argentine agriculture, and for example, they are world leading in no-tillage practices, where you do not plow the whole soil, and you lose so much fertile soil by dust, but you just use it in a much more clever way of. So this could be actually in Argentina, could be a role model in sustainable and climate-smart agriculture. So this would be something which even the current president of Argentina would like, tongue-in-cheek.
Chancellor, can I just comment? Yeah. No, I think the proposal you made is really an excellent proposal. Some of you might know that at their meeting in Beijing, the G20 agreed to have a strategy for helping countries around the world in achieving the SDGs. And I think they would really like a proposal like that because they want to be very specific and to examine the ways and means of helping countries and regions to achieve the SDGs. So I fully support what you have said. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I am from Argentina, and I can provide a short answer to your proposal. By the way, I chaired the S20 meeting in Argentina on July. The S20 is the meeting of all academies of sciences of the G20 countries. And we have a 2 days meeting discussing the food and nutrition security, but with an axis on sustainable management of soils. And there has been a document agreed by the 19 academies of sciences plus the European Union, and this document was sent to the ministers of agriculture and will go to the summit of the G20. I mean, we are working on that issue.
Well, I like a lot the suggestion, the proposal by John about integrated sustainable regions. And certainly now, because of the definition of Horizon Europe, that should be the right moment to try to induce it. And I know there is a strong interest because in general there is interest towards something concrete. Also our expert Mazzucato, she is proposing the mission-based innovation policies. I tried to propose the Mediterranean, but Moeda said it's too wide, it's difficult to have a mission-based innovation policy on the Mediterranean. But what you said about regions could be really a good point. So why don't we try to, as an outcome of this meeting, also to propose something in this direction, but also I think emulation, as you said, is the most powerful driver of change. Try also to collect good practices and to see what is going on, and based on it, maybe we can put together people with goodwill.
I think it's an excellent idea to send a letter to the President of Argentina as a host, but I will wager that climate change isn't even mentioned in the G20. The United States has asked that climate not be mentioned at all, and there is a very good chance that President Macri, as a pleasant host of Mr. Trump, will be more than obliged not to even mention the topic. We've had constant meetings for the last 2 years in Buenos Aires about this, but we should understand the power structure in the world. And the power structure is not listening to these topics. Maybe they would listen to Pope Francis on the eve of the G20. That would be quite, I think he should warn President Macri of graver consequences. What profiteth a man to gain the world and lose his soul? But we should understand this is power, and this is politics. And this is not what we're discussing. The G20 leadership is not in the business of the common good. So I just want to raise that. That is not for us not to make these points. Of course we should, and we should emphasize them, but we should not have an illusion of what this is about.
Maybe I take the liberty as a sort of co-chair of this meeting here. Jeff, of course, we know this is the real world, and the real world is a vicious place. On the other hand, I recall very well when I discussed with Fabius, who was the chair of the COP21 when the Paris Agreement was achieved, and we both referred to the famous saying by Nelson Mandela, everything seems impossible until it's done. So let's do it.